Hi and welcome everyone. Good afternoon and welcome to another session of webinar hosted to you by VLAN Asia together with Acronis. So before we start, right, we'd like to just inform everyone to not forget to follow us on our social media, which is Facebook as well as YouTube and LinkedIn. So to do that, you can actually go down to the Q&A section, which is the blimp with the question mark on it, and click on the links, right? So you can follow us on Facebook, LinkedIn, as well as YouTube to get updates from us. The other thing that I would like to inform everyone is that you can also join our next webinar, which is coming Thursday, 2 p.m., by also clicking on the link which is available in that section. And don't forget to register your attendance for today by also clicking on that link for registration, registering your attendance today, right? So in that section as well, right, throughout this session, you can actually drop your Q&A questions so that the speaker can actually take it and we can answer them. We will take that questions at the end of the session, as well as if you have anything with regards to our systems, you can also email us or drop us a mail by going to our website, which is vlan.asia, and looking up for the relevant information over there. Okay, so with all those formalities set aside already, right? So let's move on to the webinar. In today's session, we are here to learn more about how to protect our business and interests, right? With our busy schedule and also out there looking out for more sales, we tend to overlook the more important aspect of our business, which is the data or our trade of secret, right? Our trade of secrets. In the past, we used to have a safe that we can store all our important documents in so that no one can reach it other than us, right? Our trade secrets. Some even build pyramids, right? Some build top secret hideouts, and store them in safes, right? But today's day and age, we keep all our trade secrets as well as our data on our virtual servers and data banks, right? But have you ever wondered if that data is safe? Now, having a breach in security will mean business disruption for us. For some, it could even mean days, and for others, it could even mean months, right? Hence today's topic, keeping our business in business with reliable backup services and security protection. And who more qualified to represent this topic than Mr. Ron Yeo, the Senior Evangelist at Acronis. Welcome, Ron. Hi, Ron.
Hello.
Hi, welcome to the session today. Well, a little bit of Mr. Ron, right? As a senior evangelist at Acronis, Ron is responsible for Acronis channel partners training and education across the APAC region. With over 15 years of training, delivery, management, and development experience in the IT, software, and training industry in APAC, Ron has developed work knowledge of how training and enablement can transform individuals and companies and accelerate returns on investment. And without further ado, I will pass this session over to Mr. Ron. Kim, it's over to you, Ron.
Hey, thank you, Norman. And good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining this webinar from VLAN Asia, and thank you to VLAN Asia as well for inviting us to do this presentation to everybody here on this call. So what we're going to talk about today is how Acronis can actually help you keep your business in business. As we know today, there are lots of challenges that businesses face with regards to how to secure, your data, your infrastructure, your overall environment, especially with COVID, right? We have work from home mandates and all that. So how do we keep our business running in a smooth and sort of protected manner? And this is what I'm going to share with everybody today. So first, let's take a look at the threat landscape. Right? And I have some information here that is specific to Malaysia, which is the threat landscape is actually becoming more severe. And it's not just, and this is not just I would say this is a global phenomenon, right? And all of us are affected in one way or another. And we can see from some stats here, which I've gotten. So in every month, we know that, ransomware is actually getting more prevalent. And I'm sure some of you, if not all of you, have actually heard in the news about this organization or that company getting hit by ransomware and having to deal with downtime, deal with loss of customer confidence and all of that. And the stats actually bear this out. There are 7 ransomware attacks reported almost every month on average in 2021, and this is specific to Malaysia. And besides ransomware attack, we do have, of course, there are other threats that's happening, right? For example, data exfiltration, data breaches, getting hit by other types of malware. So overall, there are about 31 cybersecurity incidents that happens every day in Malaysia. So this is not just businesses, but all sorts of organizations and consumers and individuals as well. And another very worrying stat is that 84% of Malaysian SMEs have actually been compromised by cyber threat incidents. So what this means is that it is becoming more and more important for businesses, to have a way to manage all these threats that's actually happening, right? Becoming more prevalent. Now, which brings us to this: businesses need to be better prepared, right? So no longer are the days where, I just need to have, a antivirus install, I just need to have my firewall up and running, I just need to have some form of backup, so that in case something goes wrong, I can recover my systems and my data. Nowadays, okay, we are mainly dealing with, these 3 areas. Number one, the need to mitigate email threats. Studies have shown that most, if not all, right, of malware are delivered via email. In fact, 94% of malware is delivered via email. And how do all these bad actors try to persuade people to, basically click on the email is through phishing attacks. So out of all the security incidents that has been reported, phishing attack accounts for more than 80% of them. So what are phishing attack is basically some, a bad actor, typically we call them hackers or cyber criminals, whatever term that you want to use. What happens is that they use, social engineering techniques. They pretend to be, from a legitimate authority when they are not. Like they pretend to be from, let's say, a government organization. They pretend to be a customer or a vendor or someone that you are working with. All right. Or they present some juicy piece of news or a deal that is too good to be true, in the hopes of enticing the person that opens up the email to click on the link, or better yet, click on an attachment. And that's where malware will be downloaded onto the individual's devices. So social engineering, right? This is something that we need to guard against. And furthermore, a lot of this new, I would say, new generation of malwares are typically what we call zero-day attacks. What do we mean by 0 days? 0 day are pretty much, in a way, to put it in layman terms, they are totally new, unknown to antivirus softwares. They are unknown to researchers. And to be honest, in today's with today's technology, it is not that difficult for bad actors to pretty much just make some minor changes to an existing malware to make it become brand new, so that it can evade detection by your traditional antivirus. So this is something that businesses will need to consider. Will have to consider. How do I stop threats coming in through email, because that's where the majority of the threats are coming in from. And unfortunately, traditional antivirus software, traditional like spam filters are not really working to mitigate all these threats. So we need something better. And the good news is we do have something better, which I'll share with everybody afterwards. Now, next is the need for ransomware protection. I'm sure all of you have heard, right? Ransomware. In fact, there were a few cases, I think, specific to Malaysia. I'm not going to name names, There have been organizations that have been hit by ransomware. There have been companies that have been, in fact, service provider companies that have been hit by ransomware. And the challenge with ransomware today is that it's not just that there is an increase in the number of ransomware attacks. It is also a fact that, globally, there's been an increase in ransomware attacks. So locally, whether is it in Malaysia, in Singapore, and other Asia Pacific countries, we are actually seeing a huge increase in ransomware attack. Ransomware itself, or the bad actors that's perpetrating ransomware attacks, are becoming more sophisticated. So nowadays, we are seeing ransomware that target backups, and in fact, target how Windows operating systems perform all these backup. For example, the VSS technology, right? They try to use the vulnerabilities on operating systems. They use the vulnerabilities in processes to infect, data, including backups, and especially backups, because everybody knows that the one way to mitigate against ransomware is to have proper backups, to have recent backups. So if you have a backup, if you get hit by ransomware, well, you probably just need to spend a bit of time recovering from the backup, which is why nowadays ransomware are increasingly targeting backups. And again, right, with Acronis, there are ways that we can actually handle this. The other thing about ransomware is that it used to be that ransomware is an attack on its own, pretty much. So bad actors try to use phishing emails, use compromised websites to sneak in ransomware onto a business or an organization or an individual system. Today, this is no longer the case. Today, it's more of, I want to sneak into your IT environment, okay, and then I want to basically try to what we call exfiltrate, right? That means I want to bring your data out. I want to download your important data. For example, it can be your database, it can be emails, it can be documents in folders, on shares, and that leads to this thing called leak and shame. So it's no longer say, I infect your machine and then I ask for ransom. It's really nowadays, it's more like, you better give me the ransom. If not, I am going to expose your sensitive information all over the internet, right? I'm going to expose your database. I'm going to expose your customer information. I'm going to expose your sensitive details regarding your operations, regarding your customers, regarding whatever, right, that you're involved in. So this is what I call leak and shame, all in the hope of pressuring decision makers to I just bite the bullet, I just pay the ransom, right? Even though everybody always says that don't pay ransom, don't pay ransom, don't pay ransom. Okay, but there's this leak and shame. There's this leak and shame element to it in recent ransomware attacks, which brings us to the last point, which is the need for an integrated solution. So like I've previously mentioned, there are a lot of breaches and a lot of attacks that are new or unknown. We call them 0 days. Okay, and when the breach happens and the company or the organization performs an investigation, it seems that 60% of the time, that breach happened because a vulnerability that was known, that has a patch, that has an update, was not patched due to whatever reasons, right? It can be because of the number of devices in the network that prevents the IT department from patching, or it can be an SME, all right? And typically in an SME, you don't really have a full-fledged IT department. You may have one person, one or two person that is well-versed in IT, being sort of the IT guy, the IT manager, or the IT administrator that's handling all of this. And a lot of times there's no centralized or unified or integrated method to manage patching, manage antivirus settings, manage protections. Okay, That is typically the case for SMEs, whereas for larger companies, the problem is that, oh, I know that there's all these threats, so I sort of heard about it. Right? And what I then do is that I onboard more tools. But the problem with onboarding more tools is that the more tools you onboard, the more you need to spend time to configure, to deploy, to configure, and then to manage it properly so that you can get the best use out of it. But the challenge here is that, you know, because of the number of tools that they have, it becomes so burdensome, right? Oh, because it's not integrated. It's like all standalone tools. You may have a firewall, you may have antivirus, you may have patch management, you may have ransomware protection, but all of these are all separate and they are not integrated. So you have to manage them individually. The licensing will be different. The way that they work, configurations, UI, UX, all of this will be different, which makes it very burdensome to manage. And hence, I just give up. I just do the bare minimum, and that's pretty much it, right? Which, in fact, decreases security rather than increases security, unfortunately. So what can businesses do, and how can Acronis help? Right? The solution that we have is known as Acronis Cyber Protection, and that relates to our mission where we want to help organizations and businesses protect all data, applications, and systems, right? All workloads, whether is it in the office, whether is it, you know, today a lot of us are working from home, whether the system is at home and all that. And how are we going to do that? Okay, we have identified 5 areas. We are calling this the 5 vectors, all right? Or you can think about it as the 5 areas, okay, that you need to have in order to be protected. And we can see these 5 areas here: safety, accessibility, privacy, authenticity, and security. So these 5 areas need to be taken care of. The first would be safety. In other words, how to ensure that your data is safe, right? Your data, your systems, your workloads, your applications are safe. And that is actually pretty easy to do. Just make sure you have a copy, right? So especially for data, because data once is lost, and if you don't have a copy, you know, that's pretty much it. But systems, you can, I mean, worst case scenario, if you have a backup, you can always recover from the backup. That's the best. That's the best, right? But if you don't have it, you still have the option of reinstalling. It's going to take some time. It's going to take a fair bit of effort. But end of the day, you know, systems application, you can always reinstall. But data, once it's lost, it's gone forever. And that is, you know, today we know that, you know, companies' data is actually, all right, I would consider the second most important asset, all right, after human resources, right? So number one, we need to make sure that, you know, nothing is lost. There's always a copy for recovery in case of anything bad happening. And it doesn't really need to be a security threat. It can be, you know, human errors, right? I mean, we are all human. We are subject to errors. It can be like, you know, Butterfingers accidentally deleting a file, accidentally doing, you know, making a mistake on a software, or, you know, sometimes it's not even, it may not even be our own fault. It may be like, you know, a bad patch, right? A bad update that sort of breaks the system. And that's where, you know, having a copy to recover from would save us a lot of grief. Next is accessibility. Now, accessibility basically means basically means the ability to access your data wherever, anywhere, anytime. And I mean, if you think about it a little bit, this pretty much means cloud, right? So which is the most accessible location to put your data on? Well, naturally, it's cloud today. Cloud. That's why cloud services, cloud storage solutions are very popular and very prevalent, right? Increasingly being used, right? There's a reason for it, because now we don't want to be tied to one location. You know, when I need to present something to a customer, right? When I need to, you know, when I need to look at a document, get some information, I want it to be right here, right now, and which location is easier, you know, compared to cloud? There's pretty much nothing else. So that's the other thing that in Acronis we support, is to have your data not just in our cloud, but also have the possibility to be in other clouds as well, Right? So that's accessibility. Third, privacy. Now, one of the things, of course, is, cloud, is it safe? Is it secure? Is it private? Will it be susceptible to unauthorized viewing, right? Unauthorized access. And that is where privacy comes in. So things like making sure that when the data is being transmitted, is being properly protected. In other words, being encrypted. When the data is stored on the cloud, there is encryption. And there is access controls so that only the authorized person, right, whether it's the IT administrator or the individuals or the company themselves, only they have the access to this to the data. Then there is authenticity. Now, for authenticity, this means how do you prove that a copy is an exact replica of the original? We're living in a digital world today. Companies talk. We hear companies talk about, or in fact, we hear governments, right? Talk about digital transformation, reducing the amount of paperwork, digitizing everything, digitizing processes, digitizing documents, pretty much digitizing everything. So digitalization is good because it allows us to take advantage of advances in technology, right? And digitalization is also good in the sense that because digital data is easy to copy. So if, let's say, right now, if I want to share a document, for example, if I want to share my PowerPoint, my presentation with everybody, all I need to do is make a copy and then send it out through email. Now, the question becomes, how sure are you that the copy that you received is the same as the original? Now, for a PowerPoint, it's probably easy to tell, right? Relatively, you can just compare side by side. But what happens if it is a contract document, right? 10 pages of agreement with a lot of terms or financial data or process data, right? Like, delivery orders and things like that. How are you going to prove that a particular, legal, finance, process, in fact, personnel, it can be healthcare records, it can be HR records, it can be pay, right? Your salary records. How sure are you that the copy is the same as the original, that it hasn't been tampered with? Because that does happen, right? So we also need to be able to be sure that a copy, especially with our digital economy, with our digitization, digital transformation, initiatives nowadays, that whatever is digitized, whatever we do have a copy of, okay, we can prove that it is the same as the original, right? So that there's no doubt. Because the moment there's doubt, then trust is eroded, and it becomes very difficult. Things will become difficult. And last is security. Security, in other words, cyber security is protection against bad actors. So protection against email threats, protection against malware, ransomware, protection against data breaches and all of that. How do we make sure, not just for the organization, not just for deliberate actions, but unintentional actions? For example, one of the things that it's not that users are not aware. Sometimes they're just tricked by it. Today's phishing email are very professional, right? You can't even, a lot of times it's no longer back in the day where, I want to look at the email, I know that it's a phishing email because of the bad language, right? Bad grammar, bad language, horrible graphics and all that. But today's phishing email can be very professional. They use the correct language, they use proper grammar, and proper graphics and layouts and formats and all that. And the only thing that gives a phishing email away might be if you scrutinize the sender address very, very deliberately, right? So how do we get protection? We must be protected against all of these different varieties of threats. Okay, and that brings me to our solution, Acronis Cyber Protect Cloud, okay, which is built on the 5 vectors of Acronis cyber protection that we have talked about just now. And in our Cyber Protect Cloud, the idea is we want to help businesses, we want to help organizations, and in fact, even individuals be able to protect every workload with minimal effort. And it starts with, having a best-in-breed backup. Some of you that may have known Acronis for some time, or may even be using Acronis, will know that Acronis has traditionally been a data protection company. That means we deal in backup, we deal in recovery, disaster recovery. But today we are going way beyond that. We are integrating security and management because we know that backup is no longer sufficient. Backup needs to be integrated with security in order to protect modern businesses. And this is what we did. So it's not just enough to have the best backup anymore. We need to have things like antivirus, anti-ransomware capabilities, protection against malicious URLs. We need to be able to manage patching. For example, there's patch management built in. So here we can see that in our solution, it's not just backup on its own, or it's not just antivirus on its own, it's not just patch management on its own. No, all of these capabilities are integrated into one single solution. To give an example, something that Acronis can do, which no other vendors can, is that we are able to scan backups for malware automatically. So if you back up with Acronis, one of the things that you don't really need to have to worry about is what happened. Are my backups infected, right? How sure am I that the backup is actually clean? Because I do regular backups, and sophisticated malware has a nasty habit of hiding before activating, right? They don't activate immediately. It's not like, back in the day, like what I said, right? The leak and shame. They hide, they basically do the reconnaissance, they try to exfiltrate data, and the last step then they will activate the ransomware. That's typically how a modern attack goes. So one of the things that we know is that that's going to help businesses a lot is to make sure that you can trust the backup, right? So that happens because we have integrated antivirus capabilities and anti-ransomware capabilities into our backup as well. So we can actually scan backups for ransomware. Another interesting capability that we have is integrated URL filtering, for example. So URL filtering, that is actually available as what we call an advanced capability. One of the things that happens, right, is that users accidentally click on links because they're tricked, right? Phishing emails, like what I say today, very sophisticated. So they're tricked into clicking an email, clicking a link, which brings them to a malicious website, or a fake website, if you will, that looks and feels exactly like an official website, except that they're asking for, login details, they're asking for banking or personal details, so that they can make use of all these details to try and, get into your systems, right? Get into your environment. With Acronis Cyber Protect Cloud, there is something called URL filtering. In other words, we have a database of malicious URLs, which is updated, in fact, not even on a daily basis, but if I'm not mistaken, an hourly basis. So we get this database, of course, by working with other security vendors. Later on, I will show some of the security organizations that Acronis is actually part of. But with that URL filtering activated, if you have Acronis Cyber Protect Cloud, even if your users accidentally go and click on the email, click on the link, a malicious link, a phishing email link, if the link is malicious, if it is a fake website, the users will actually be blocked from proceeding on to that website. So there is at least one additional layer, right, of protection. Okay. So the whole idea is to make sure that we help businesses Not just with making sure that their data is protected, but making sure that their security is taken care of. And it's not just one item, right? It's a complete solution where you get anti-ransomware, you get anti-malware, you get your backups, you get antivirus integrated with backup. You also have the ability to manage your patches, right? One of the things that security experts always tells us, hey, you need to patch, you need to patch, you need to patch, right? You need to make sure your software is updated, your OS is updated, everything is updated. Unfortunately, it's not that easy to do, especially for SMEs, right? Because you don't really have that. You can't. A lot of times, SMEs either don't have the expertise or they may not even be able to do it. They may not even be able to deploy this patch management, okay, due to lack of manpower to manage, right? And this is where we can actually help, right? Accelerate what we call accelerate the security and manageability of all of these very, you can think about it as fairly complex requirements. Which brings me to this next part here. So what you have seen just now is just sort of the standard features. Then you might be asking, hey, Ron, you talked about email threats. So how can Acronis help me mitigate email threats? That is where our additional functionality comes in, right? So what we call basically we are calling our advanced functionality advanced pack. So you can see here there's quite a number of them. In fact, right now so far we have released about 6 different advanced packs, and they cover different areas because we know that depending on the size and the type of the size of the company and the type of industry that you're in, not all companies requires all of these capabilities, right? So for example, advanced email security. This is something that we offer to our customers, and with advanced email security, we will be able to take care of phishing, spam, malware, and something called BEC. I'm not too sure if you have heard of this term before, right? What they call it, this business email compromise, if I'm not mistaken. So the whole idea is that you may have seen this as well, is that you receive an email pretending to be your supplier, right? Pretending to be somebody you have some relationship with, right? A business relationship with, that is saying that, hey, I have not received I have not received whatever you're supposed to deliver. Or, hey, you're missing a payment. Or, hey, the last payment that I tried to pay to you did not go through. Can I have your account details so that I can send it again? Or there's some missing taxes and all that kind of missing fees here and there. Can you provide your details? And they specifically target finance departments, account departments, and pretend to be, somebody, again, pretending to be somebody that they're not. And a lot of times there have been cases of companies falling for this kind of emails. So our advanced email security actually can help prevent that. So prevent all the different types of threats that comes in through email with our advanced email security. I was talking about URL filtering. That is where our advanced security comes in. So you get capabilities like URL filtering, which will block dangerous URLs, malicious URLs. You also have very advanced anti-ransomware, anti-malware protection with AI-driven. So I'm going to be a bit technical here. AI-driven exploit prevention, as well as AI-driven behavioral models, behavioral detection. What this means is that I mentioned, right, 0 days. So one of the big threats today is 0 days, which traditional antivirus simply cannot handle. But with our advanced security, we perform detection not just by signature comparison. That's one way of doing things. Another way that we are trying to detect malicious software is by their behavior. So when we detect, hey, this is not normal behavior, this is actually malicious behavior, this behavior that a normal software will not do, right? Something that a normal software is not supposed to be doing, but instead is most likely a malicious software we will be able to detect and stop that malicious software. So this is how we can actually detect 0 days, right, with advanced security. Then there is advanced management. Advanced management, one of the things that we can help businesses is help to manage all of your patches and updates. Make sure that it's not just the operating system. I know that, people will say, I have Windows Update, but Windows Update only takes care of Windows. It doesn't take care of other software, like, for example, your collaboration software like Teams, like Zooms or WebEx. There are a lot of other software like your browsers, for example, if you're using other browsers, if you're using other softwares, Adobe software, for example, Windows Update is not going to take care of that. But with our patch management, you can very easily see across all of your devices what are the machines that have been updated, that have not been updated, how outdated they are, and you can very easily schedule automatic patching, for example. Another nice thing that is in our advanced management is the ability to tell you how healthy your hard disks are. One of the very common reasons for data loss, right, is hard disk failure. Okay. So it's not all about security threats, but it's also more mundane stuff like hardware failure. Right? And one of the most common reasons behind data loss is unexpected failure of hard disk. Well, it's not really unexpected. It's just that a lot of times companies don't really pay attention to hard disk monitoring. Okay, but it is something that should be performed, because especially with larger capacity disks nowadays, if there is a disk failure, there's a huge risk of losing quite a large amount of data. So of course, recommendation is that if you have sensitive data, you should always have it on redundant disks like RAIDs, and you should have multiple copies. But another way of mitigating against hard disk failure risk is to be absolutely sure how healthy the disk is. In other words, is the disk at risk of failure? What is the percentage, right? That a disk is going to fail in the next, say, week or month or so. That's something that we can actually tell you, right? That's something that's in our advanced management, which is hard disk health monitoring. And then there are the advanced backup, advanced DR. Advanced backup is really meant for companies that have the deploy, for example, clusters, Exchange and SQL clusters, or enterprise databases like SAP HANA and Oracle DB. So one of the things that is in advanced backup is support for these types of, in a way, more advanced setup, right? That you don't really find in SMEs, okay, but in mid or large size companies. Then there is advanced disaster recovery. For advanced disaster recovery, one of the challenges is always, so if I have a failure and I need to recover, number one, I need to standby hardware, right? Or if I am using virtualization, I need to standby sufficient resources to recover. Okay, so virtualization, yes, it's very easy to spin up new virtual machines, but one of the things that we sometimes neglect is that, spinning up new virtual machines is easy, but do you have sufficient resources to enable this additional virtual machine, right? And that is where our advanced DR comes in. We offer cloud-based disaster recovery for our customers, which means what? You don't need to worry whether is it a physical server or virtual machine, whatever is the failure. We can spin up virtual machines in our cloud for disaster recovery purposes. So this means that what we can do is that you can actually back up to the cloud. You can store your backups in the cloud. And then we will be able to immediately spin up a virtual machine for you if your original machine fails. So it's something like AWS and Azure, right? Some of you might be familiar with AWS and Azure. So the ability to spin up virtual machines or what we call cloud instances in the cloud itself, and we offer that to our customers. So you at least have more confidence and more alternatives, okay, especially when you are faced with a outage or outage scenario. And finally, our advanced file sync and share with notarization and e-signature. So increasingly, it is becoming more and more important to be able to verify that, hey, my document, my copy of my agreement, my copy of a legal or financial or records is authentic, has not been changed, has not been tampered with. And that is where one of the things that we can do, which is notarization, comes in. Notarization pretty much uses blockchain technology. And when you use our notarization technology, what we can do is we can create a unique signature for your file, whichever it is. It can be a legal document, it can be a health record, it can be a process document, whatever it is, and store it in the cloud so that in the future, if you need to prove that the document is the same document, that it has not been changed, you can very easily prove it, okay, to pretty much anybody, right? To your supplier, to your counterparty, and all of that. So that is notarization. Okay. So these are that is what Acronis can bring to the table, which is to help you manage your security, improve your security, simplify the way that you handle all of these different tools that we offer, okay, as well as get the best in terms of antivirus, anti-ransomware, backup capabilities. Now, this slide here, which is my second slide, right, shows all of the our security industry recognition. Those of you that is more into security, this probably would be nothing new to you, which is any vendor that wants to be in the security space will need to go through a lot of, I would say, accreditation and certification, right? This is all the different accreditations that we have. So we are a member, for example, of Cloud Security Alliance, Anti-Phishing Group, Anti-Malware. So these are all well-known, well-recognized, testing authorities. So for example, VirusTotal, right, or VV100, or AV Tests, or AV Comparatives. These are basically organizations that perform tests on security solutions, most specifically on antivirus, anti-malware scanners provided by all the different vendors out there. And of course, Acronis is one of them. We actually send in our antivirus engine for testing. The frequency really depends. Some of them is on a monthly basis, some of them is on a quarterly basis. So it really depends on what kind of tests that they're actually running. On top of that, we are basically members of security organizations. So we share. So security industry is actually very tight-knit, right? Even though we are competitors at some level, but on other levels, we are actually partners together. Because better security is good for everybody, right? So anytime, let's say we find new malwares, we have new ransomware detected, new methods, all right, of breaching or breaches, new types of compromises that's detected, we share them with everybody so that everybody can get protected. Okay, so these are all the security industry recognition that we have. Okay, so that you can be confident that Acronis is, really on top of things in the security space. Okay, and I am going to, this is my last slide. So why Acronis, right? Why? The main idea is you want to lower the risk, the security risk for a business in today's, threat environment. So Acronis can help you eliminate gaps in your defenses, like what I mentioned, right? It's not just about traditional antivirus or firewalls anymore. You need to have proper backup. You need to be able to have, email security, because that is like the one place that all the threats are actually coming in, 94%, right? We provide things like, helping you to manage your updates through patch management, updates of your operating systems, updates of your user applications, helping you prevent accidental infection, right? When, unfortunately, someone gets tricked by an email and click on a link, we have URL filtering. And to help you, get back up and running in case of an outage, we have cloud-based disaster recovery. So it's comprehensive, right? It's not just one item, it's all of these different capabilities to basically help you, cover all your gaps, right, that you have. And at the same time, be able to upgrade the protection of every workload. So we can it's not just about, servers. A lot of people a lot of times like, my endpoints, I just need to have antivirus, that's good enough. No, that's not sufficient. You need to make sure your systems are properly patched. Same as your servers, right? Okay, and to make sure that you are always productive, to be able to recover data very easily and very quickly if you are unfortunate enough to suffer an outage, right? So with this, I will thank you. This brings me to my end of our presentation, and with this, I will hand it back over to Norman. Thank you, everyone, very much.
Thanks, Ron. Thanks for sharing the insight of Acronis, right? It's sometimes we take things for granted without realizing that protection is so important, right? Data protection is so important, not just like you mentioned, antivirus, right? That's what we usually say, like, as long as we install the antivirus, we're safe. No, it's, a lot of hackers and what do you call this, malicious people out there, right? They have many kinds of ways of trying to get into our system and trying to steal the data, because it's very expensive to have that data, that information, right? Our trade secrets, right? And once we start leaking it, that's it, right? There goes our business, right?
Yes, exactly.
Okay, so now we're into the session where we'll take Q&As. So we would like to ask you guys to just send us your Q&As in the Q&A session if you have any, so that we can actually take them, right? Yeah, so we have a couple of you, like Ron, that has actually come in. Let me just read out one of it, right? This is from Ganesan, right? He's asking that what is the best practice and interval of time to backup database and server image files on bare metal?
Okay, so for this, there is no, this is a very common question, right? So what is the interval and what is that we should do our backups for servers and databases? Unfortunately, there isn't really a good answer for this. What I would basically recommend would be that you need to pretty much understand the rate of change of data in your server or in your database. So what is the rate of change, for example? Because not all databases are the same, right? So you have databases that is very active, the rate of change is very high. And you have databases that, just doesn't change that frequently. So you need to first understand the rate of change, and then decide that, hey, based on the rate of change of data, what is the potential impact? So typically, in this case, we will go back to something called RTOs and RPOs, right? RPO meaning recovery point objective. Now, one thing to remember is that backup is what we call the last resort. So it's when everything fails, right? If you have important data or systems, you should always think about, redundancies and clusters and all that. That's supposed to prevent single point of failure. And after that, then we talk about backup. Now, when backup, there is always loss. So one thing that a lot of times a lot of people don't get is that, hey, backup, can it be, can I zero the loss? No, it's not possible. There's always going to be some loss. And the amount of loss depends on the frequency of your backup. Okay, so again, we come back to rate of change of data. So for example, if your rate of change of data is for example, a certain amount over, let's say, a day, right? Or over an hour. So if you find that your rate of change of data is very high in the span of, we take a reference, right? Let's say an hour. That might mean that you might need to perform hourly backups, for example, if that data is very critical to you. For example, e-commerce websites, during busy periods, you have orders coming in, okay, at a very high rate, right? That might basically mean that you need to back up on an hourly basis. But if your rate of change of data is not that, right, and on an hourly basis, the change is not that frequent, it's very low, then you can consider lengthening it, right? 2 hours, 4 hours, 8 hours, even daily. So my advice is understand the rate of change of data, right? How valuable is that data? For example, one of the ways that you can calculate is your what we call the revenue per hour that correlates with your data, right? So what is the revenue per hour, or what's the cost per hour, for example? And then is it worthwhile to actually perform backups at the kind of rate, right? So I hope I answered the question. So there's no like hard and fast, 1 hour.
Yeah,
it's very subjective.
Very subjective. Yeah, it depends on the rate of change of data, right?
Yeah.
So it's good to have someone who actually can help you calculate that and
Yes.
advise you on it, right?
Correct.
Another question that came in is from Sean, right? He's asking that what is the benefits of having a cloud-based server compared to a physical one, and is it safer to be on a public cloud?
Okay, so number one, cloud-based versus physical, right? Physical on premises. Again, a lot of times it really depends on the company's resources. So the thing is, if you talk about let's compare and contrast the two. For a physical server, you have quite a fair amount of upfront costs. You need the hardware, you need the software, you need maintenance, right? Ongoing maintenance. So these are all basically sunk costs you need to sink in to keep it running. Whereas for cloud, a lot of times in today's environment, it's in a way pay only when you use. So if I need it now, I spin it up. And the good thing is that a lot of such services, right, including Acronis, you pay pretty much on a subscription on an ongoing basis. You use it, you pay. You use more, you pay more. You use less, you pay less. So there isn't really a sunk cost in a sense, right? But then there's the flip side. So cloud, after all, it really depends, right? Yes, we can actually have like a cloud server with lots of RAM and lots of CPU and all that, right? Dedicated servers and all of that. But end of the day, okay, for certain applications, it still needs to be on-prem, okay, due to the very high, resource requirements of those, or it can also be due to security requirements. Like what Norman is saying, trade secrets. So you may not want to run the risk. Yes, cloud environment typically are very secure. Especially today, they are mature, they are secure, but we say that usually the weakness is between the seat and the monitor. Right? Just one misconfiguration and you may accidentally expose your cloud servers. All right, you have more control at least over a physical server on premise. So that's the consideration. Number one, your cost. All right. Number two, do you have other considerations like performance as well as security that it basically mandates having it on premise as a physical device?
Yep, true. Okay, I think this is a follow-up question they're asking for companies that are using traditional way to do backup. Example like manual hard drive saving in local PC. What will you recommend as a first step to be taken if companies would like to start using Acronis backup or any type of backups?
So the first step, traditional, I would say that for traditional backup, right, where you are pretty much storing your backups on premises, that is sort of the starting point. The next step would be to think about because we always say that for backups, we want to, as much as possible, follow what we call the 3-2-1 rule of backup. So for all of your data, you should have 3 copies, which means if you have just 1 copy physical, you need to think about 1 copy remote. Okay, so 3 means 3 copies of your data, 1 production, 2 backups. 2, your 2 backups should be stored on 2 different medias, right? 2 separate, and 1 of them should be offsite, just in case something bad happens to your local site. It can be electrical outage, flooding,
Fire.
unpredictable stuff that happens, right? Fire. You don't want to keep all your eggs in 1 basket. You want to sort of spread them out. So if you have local, great. Your next thing would be cloud, right? We say, where do you, or if it's cloud, you can think about, Acronis Cloud, definitely, right? Because, after all, it's integrated into the solution, you don't need to go and set things up again and all of that. You can also, if you have different locations, let's say you have, 2 different physical locations, 2 different offices, you can also think about, hey, whatever data, whatever backup that I have for my devices in location 1, I find some way to, move them over to location 2 and vice versa. So that at least, of course, make sure they're geographically separate. Don't be like next door or next building. Should be quite a distance apart, so that you have your data, so that if, let's say, your local sites gets impacted, you still have your data to recover from.
Right. Yeah, that's very good advice. Very good advice.
Yeah.
Okay, another question, right? Could you share what is the difference or advantages of having this kind of backup compared with putting our backup in those free version platforms like Google Drive? Wow, that's yeah.
Okay, so that is actually very easy to answer. Number 1, with free software means you do your own support, right? So that's the number 1 thing. So you need to do your own support, which means any problems, you can look at community websites, help files, blah, 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 and all of that. But a lot of cases, if you encounter a problem, you're on your own, right? There is no dedicated support that you can get with, let's say, a solution like Acronis, right? Solution, we have dedicated support. Or our partners like VLAN Asia can provide dedicated support compared to free software. Free software, you're on your own. Okay, that's the number 1 thing. So how if a problem occurs, right? Who can you go to? Okay, with a solution like Acronis, you can go to Acronis, or you can go to VLAN Asia, our partners. That's the first thing. Second thing, free software, by virtue of them being free, is not really free. There's no free lunch. Let's just put it this way. You're paying with, there's this saying, I don't know. Okay, if you are, what is that? The saying that, if you are using something for free, is I can't remember the saying. It basically means that you are the product. In other words, you're paying for free items with other things, with, for example, personal information, with behavior tracking, for example. So like, simple example, Google Drive, right? In fact, they have a free tier, they have paid tiers, but with free and paid tiers is the same. So if you use a free tier, for example, one of the things, if you go and read the fine print, is that Google reserves the right to track your behavior when using the app. In fact, they even scan whatever is actually uploaded into Google Drive. Same thing like Google Mail. So, I can use free email. Why do I want to set up email servers or go for email hosting or buy email software or use Office 365? Very good, very simple reason. All these free applications, they need something to be able to pay for those applications. How they pay for it is they basically collect your data.
Another question came in. I think it's a follow-up for that question, right? Is it secure? It's free, right? Is it secure? That's
security is secure. Okay, so let's talk in terms of security. When we say is it secure, there is different levels of security.
Has there a data breach happened before because of cloud backup?
Okay, so security in this case, let's talk about there's no such thing as 100% security. Okay, even just, okay, don't quote me. Don't say, hey, Ron say one. But even Acronis is not 100% immune. It's always a race. right? We are trying to get one step ahead of the bad actors. The bad actors are always trying to get one step ahead of us, right? The challenge is that, you know, if you are going to put your data onto a cloud, right? How sensitive is that information? What is the impact if it leaks out? Okay. And for all these cloud applications, like what I said, today's cloud applications are actually fairly mature. Yes, there have been breaches in the past, right? Microsoft suffered breaches, Outlook suffered breaches. The more, I would say, breaches nowadays is becoming very, very rare. It does happen, but it's very, very rare, right? And this is, in a way, cost of doing business. If you want to use a cloud, for example, then you have to basically be able to measure the risk, right? So then I may be thinking about, so if let's say my data is very, very sensitive, okay, then in other words, you know, but I still want to take advantage of cloud, right? Like efficiencies and lower costs and all of that. So how do I have that assurance? If something happens, my data won't leak. Then you can think about things like encryption. For example, but it's the same with Acronis. We always recommend, if you're worried, you know, if you have the additional security considerations or concerns, encrypt your backup. So that, you know, even if somebody, you know, just to say an example, one crazy person runs into our data center, grabs a couple of disks. Your data is encrypted, 100% safe.
Yep, that's true. Always be protected.
Yes.
There's no way of 100%, right, of anything.
Correct.
Right. Okay, we're running out of time, Ron. So we'll just take one last question.
Sure.
This question is, any specific radius of DR?
Any specific, coming in?
Any specific radius of DR?
Radius as in?
Radius. Yeah. I think this is a follow-up question for the backup, right? So data recovery, right? So DR, I think, is there any specific radius? I think he's mentioning about that.
Okay. Oh, radius. I think you're, correct me if I'm wrong.
Yes.
I assume that you're covering. You're referring to coverage. So in fact, again, it goes back to your revenue per hour or your cost per hour. So if let's say you have to actually make an assessment. If just for example, I have 10 servers. If each of what is the impact if they go down, right? Individually as well as a group. Usually there are some dependencies across your server infrastructure. So what is the dependencies? I would actually do it in a phased manner. I would recommend doing it in a phased manner. Basically identify, you know, your top 3 or your top 5 mission critical applications or services or servers. All right, because these are usually the most costly if they go down. Okay. And then make sure that they are actually well protected. So you need to have things like, if you need to have things like redundancy, and then you need to set up, you know, disaster recovery for this, your top 3 or your top 5. So once you get a handle on that, you're comfortable, then you basically do, you know, phase 2. Do I want to cover the rest? Does it make sense for me in terms of costs, all right, to cover the other servers and so on? So that is how I would actually suggest doing it. Okay.
Okay. Right. Great. Thanks so much, Ron, for your time and taking the time to answer all those questions. Right.
Sure. Pleasure.
Is there any last advice for all our attendees today?
Well, my last advice would be to always be skeptical. Okay. Especially of anything that comes in through the email that looks too good to be true. Always be skeptical always double check before you click on anything on an email, or better yet, use Acronis Advanced Email Security.
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah, that's true. That's true. There's like hundreds of thousands of princes from Africa that always sends the email out, right? So you must always be careful about clicking on it.
Yes.
Okay, thank you so much, Ron, for your time today. Thank you, everyone, for staying back till the end of the webinar. So do scan the QR code on the screen and give us your attendance so that we can also get in touch with you. And if you have any other questions, you can drop us an email as well. Also, just a reminder, this coming Thursday, we'll have another webinar. It's on training. It's going to be conducted by Stephen Chia. So if you have time to join us. It's 2 p.m. on Thursday. It's a 2-hour webinar on training and preparing for next year. If you want to know more, you can scan the QR code, which is displayed on the screen, register, and join us then, right? So thank you, everyone. Stay safe and have a good week ahead. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.